The desert holds its breath, guarding 25 ancient secrets. Beneath the endless sands lie answers to questions we have barely learned to ask. This journey will uncover lost cities, forgotten technologies, and civilizations that vanished without a trace. You will discover how humanity not only survived but thrived in the world's harshest environments, leaving behind puzzles that challenge our understanding of history. Why did a massive Persian army disappear into a sandstorm? And what is the true age of the Great Sphinx? Which lost civilization do you hope we will rediscover next? Our first secret emerges from the whispers of the Rub al-Khali, the legendary city of Ubar. For centuries, it was known only as a fable, the Atlantis of the sands, a place of immense wealth and hubris that was said to have been swallowed by the desert as punishment. Ancient texts, including the Quran, spoke of a powerful and prosperous people, the tribe of Ad, who inhabited a city of towering pillars and great wealth. They ignored the warnings of their prophet and were consequently destroyed, their magnificent city vanishing beneath a cataclysmic sandstorm. For generations, scholars debated whether Ubar was a moral allegory or a real, tangible place lost to time. The search for it became an obsession, a quest to prove that a cornerstone of desert legend was rooted in historical truth. This is where modern technology entered the ancient tale. In the 1980s, a team of researchers led by explorer Nicholas Clapp took a radical new approach. They turned to the skies, using satellite imagery from NASA to trace the faint, ghostly lines of ancient caravan routes that were invisible from the ground. These old tracks, like wrinkles on the face of the desert, all seem to converge on one specific, remote spot in modern-day Oman. Following these celestial maps, the expedition employed ground-penetrating radar, a device that sees through sand like a doctor's X-ray sees through skin. The radar revealed the outlines of a large, octagonal fortress with tall towers and deep chambers, all buried just beneath the surface. When they began to dig, they unearthed the remains of a major caravanserai, a hub for the frankincense trade that once fueled the economies of the ancient world. Pottery sherds, incense burners, and the foundations of massive walls confirmed this was a significant and wealthy settlement that met a sudden, violent end. Evidence pointed to a catastrophic collapse where a large limestone cavern underneath the city gave way, creating a sinkhole that dragged the structures down into the earth before the desert sands swept in to seal the tomb. So, was this truly the fabled Ubar of the Ad? While the name may forever be debated, the discovery proved a profound truth. A city of immense importance, once dismissed as mere myth, did indeed exist, and its rediscovery reminds us that the desert's greatest secrets are not always lost, but simply waiting for the right moment to be seen again. While one lost city was swallowed by the desert sands, another ancient culture left its mark on the surface for all to see, but only from the heavens. Far across the world, on the arid plains of southern Peru, lies a mystery etched into the very skin of the earth. These are the Nazca lines, a sprawling gallery of geoglyphs so immense their creators could never have seen their full glory. For centuries, these drawings remained hidden, their scale too vast for any ground-level observer to comprehend. It was only with the advent of modern flight that the true wonder of Nazca was revealed. From the window of an airplane, a breathtaking panorama unfolds. A colossal hummingbird, its wingspan stretching for hundreds of feet, seems to hover over the desert floor. A sinuous monkey with an elaborately coiled tail rests nearby. A massive spider, perfectly proportioned, and a strange, humanoid figure nicknamed the astronaut, with its wide, gazing eyes, all form a menagerie of giants. The precision is staggering. How could a people without flight create such perfect, large-scale art intended for a viewpoint they could never achieve? The theories are as varied as the figures themselves. One compelling idea suggests the lines formed a vast astronomical calendar, with the animal shapes and long, straight lines aligning with the rising and setting of the sun, moon, and stars on significant dates, turning the entire desert into a cosmic clock. Others propose they were sacred pathways walked by priests during religious ceremonies to communicate with deities, the very act of walking the lines a form of prayer or pilgrimage. Then there are the more speculative ideas, from elaborate irrigation maps to, most famously, landing strips for extraterrestrial visitors. Yet the most profound answer likely lies not with aliens, but with the ingenuity of the Nazca people themselves. Their technique was deceptively simple, yet required remarkable planning. The dark, sun-baked stones coating the desert surface were removed, revealing the lighter, contrasting soil beneath. This created lines that have endured for over 2,000 years. They may have used simple grids and scaling techniques, transferring a small design to a monumental scale with ropes and stakes. The stable, windless climate of the plateau acted as a perfect preservative. So were the lines a message to the gods, a map of the cosmos, or a testament to a culture's desire to make its mark on the world. Perhaps they were all these things, a permanent prayer written not on paper, but on the body of the desert itself. From the vast, open canvases of the desert, our search for secrets now leads us underground, into the heart of a legend that predates them all. For over 4,000 years, the story of Gilgamesh has echoed through time. The Epic of Gilgamesh, inscribed on crumbling clay tablets, tells of a Sumerian king, part god and part man, who ruled the city of Uruk with unmatched strength. He sought the secret of eternal life, only to learn that true immortality lies in the legacy one leaves behind. But what if his physical legacy, his final resting place, has been waiting to be found all this time? In 2003, a team of German archaeologists working in the ancient city of Uruk in modern-day Iraq made a stunning announcement. They believed they had found the entire tomb of Gilgamesh submerged beneath the waters of the Euphrates River. Using advanced technology to peer through layers of sediment and time, they detected what appeared to be a structure matching descriptions from the epic itself, a grand burial chamber fit for a king of legends. The potential discovery is monumental. Finding the tomb of Gilgamesh would be less about uncovering a skeleton and more about touching the roots of civilization itself. It would provide an unprecedented bridge between myth and history, proving that the great king was not merely a character in a poem, but a real historical figure who inspired the world's first great epic. Such a find could unlock secrets of Sumerian engineering, royal burial practices, and the very origins of urban life in Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. Yet the path to this discovery is fraught with immense challenges. The region is one of the most politically unstable in the world. Decades of conflict and ongoing tensions make sustained, careful archaeological work nearly impossible. The site itself is perilous, and the threat of looting is constant, with priceless artifacts often disappearing into the black market, their historical context lost forever. Excavating the tomb of Gilgamesh would require not just scientific skill, but a fragile window of peace. It stands as a powerful reminder that some of history's greatest secrets are protected not only by sand and stone, but by the turbulent currents of our own time. Yet these ancient quests for legacy and survival are dwarfed by a network of structures so vast they can only be understood from the sky. Scattered across the deserts of the Middle East, from Saudi Arabia to Armenia, are thousands of enigmatic stone formations known as desert kites. Their name comes from their appearance from above, where long, converging lines of piled rock stretch for miles, leading to a central enclosure that looks like the body of a kite. For centuries, their purpose was a complete mystery, seen by early travelers as the remnants of ancient forts or ceremonial grounds. The truth, however, reveals a story of breathtaking ingenuity and communal survival on a scale we are only just beginning to comprehend. These were not dwellings or temples, but massive, sophisticated animal traps, Imagine a group of hunters working with an intimate knowledge of the land and animal migration routes. They would construct two long, low stone walls, sometimes stretching over 3 miles in length, forming a giant V-shape that funneled herds of gazelles or other wild game. The animals, once inside the wide opening of the V, would be gently guided by the walls as they moved across the landscape. They would not perceive the low barriers as a threat until it was too late. The walls gradually narrowed, channeling the panicking herd into a much smaller, enclosed pit or stone corral at the apex of the V where hunters waited. This was not a random act, but a carefully orchestrated communal hunt, a technology of survival perfected over generations. The sheer effort involved is staggering. Moving thousands of tons of stone across vast distances required the coordinated labor of hundreds, perhaps thousands of people, pointing to a highly organized society with shared goals and deep ecological knowledge. These kites fundamentally change our understanding of prehistoric desert peoples. They were not merely scattered bands of nomads struggling to survive, but sophisticated communities capable of large-scale engineering projects that transformed the landscape itself to ensure their prosperity. Why did they need to build on such an immense scale, and what did these successful hunts mean for the growth of their civilizations? The desert kites stand as a silent testament to a forgotten chapter of human cooperation, a web of stone that turned the entire desert into a single, purposeful hunting ground. But the ingenuity of Stone Age hunters is not the only story the desert sands have preserved. Deep within the parched heart of the Sahara, in the labyrinthine caves of Tassili Enager in Algeria, lies a gallery of ghosts. Here, on the weathered rock faces, are thousands of paintings and carvings that tell an impossible story. They depict a world that is utterly alien to the surrounding dunes, a land of lush river valleys and deep lakes. Herds of elephants march across the stone canvas, giraffes crane their long necks to browse from acacia trees, hippos wallow in waterways, and crocodiles bask on what are now sun-blasted rocks. Human figures hunt with bows and arrows, herd cattle, and dance in vibrant communal scenes. This is not a work of fantasy. It is a portrait of a lost world, a green Sahara. How could such a teeming paradise exist where there is now only the world's largest desert? The answer lies in a dramatic and recurring cycle of climate change. Between approximately 10,000 and 5,000 years ago, a wobble in the Earth's orbit shifted monsoon patterns, bringing torrential seasonal rains to North Africa. What is now the Sahara transformed into a vast savanna, a mosaic of grasslands, shrubs, and sprawling freshwater lakes. This period is known as the African Humid Period, and the cave art of Tassili Enager is its most vivid diary. The artists were not depicting an imaginary Eden, they were recording their daily reality. These images are a direct window into the lives of the people who thrived in this green corridor. We see their social structures, their hunting methods, their spiritual beliefs, and the abundant wildlife they lived alongside. This art does more than document a lost ecosystem, it charts a mass human migration. When the climate began to shift again around 5,000 years ago, the rains slowly failed. The lakes dried up, the grasslands turned to dust, and the desert we know today began its inexorable advance. The people depicted in these caves, the ancestors of modern Saharan cultures, were forced to follow the retreating water. Some moved south toward the Niger River and the Congo. Others moved east toward the Nile Valley. This great dispersal, triggered by the desert's return, may have been the catalyst for the rise of powerful new societies along the great rivers of Africa. So the next time you picture the Sahara as an eternal, empty expanse, remember the caves of Tassili Enager. They hold an urgent message carved in stone, a testament to the fragility of our environment and the profound resilience of humanity in the face of a changing world. The fragility of a world painted on cave walls stands in stark contrast to a treasure literally etched in metal. While the Sahara preserves memories of a lost paradise, a different desert, the Judean Desert, guards a secret of unimaginable material wealth. Among the famous Dead Sea Scrolls, those ancient religious manuscripts that revolutionized our understanding of the Bible, one document stands utterly apart. It is not made of fragile parchment, but of corroded copper. This is the Copper Scroll, and it contains no psalms or prophecies. Instead, it presents a maddeningly practical puzzle, a list of 64 hiding places where a fortune in gold and silver was supposedly secreted away. The text is brutally matter-of-fact. It describes staggering quantities, like a priestly robe with gold and silver amounting to 17 talents, or vessels containing 900 talents of silver. To understand the scale, a single talent was roughly 75 pounds. The scroll speaks of hundreds of talents, meaning tons of precious metal, a hoard that would be worth billions in today's currency. The directions, however, are anything but straightforward. They are cryptic, referring to specific gutters, dams, and ancient place names that have been lost to time. One entry might instruct you to dig at the ruin that is in the valley, under the large paving stone, in the hole at its mouth. Another speaks of a tomb with a double chamber, warning of a duplicate copy of this document and its explanation. For decades, scholars have debated its origin. Was this the treasure of the Second Jewish Temple in Jerusalem, hidden away from the invading Roman legions around 70 Common Era? Or was it the accumulated wealth of a strict Jewish sect, the Essenes, who many believe authored the other Dead Sea Scrolls? The very material of the scroll adds to the mystery. Why go to the immense trouble of engraving a list on expensive, durable copper unless you intended it to last, unless the treasure was real and immensely important? This question has fueled a century of treasure hunts, each more desperate than the last. Expeditions have scoured the arid landscape around Qumran, where the scroll was found, using every tool from simple shovels to ground-penetrating radar. They have dug at the base of ancient aqueducts, investigated forgotten cisterns, and paced off distances from long collapsed walls. Yet not a single bar of gold or silver from the list has ever been officially recovered. Some believe the treasure was found and looted centuries ago, perhaps by the Romans themselves. Others think the cryptic directions were a code understood only by a select few, a code that died with its keepers. A more tantalizing theory suggests the treasure was not physical wealth at all, but a spiritual allegory for hidden wisdom. But the sheer, specific detail of the Copper Scroll argues against this. It feels like an inventory, a record meant for a practical purpose. So, does the treasure still lie buried somewhere in the Judean hills, waiting for someone to finally crack the 2,000-year-old code? The Copper Scroll remains one of history's most compelling and frustrating treasure maps, a testament not to faith or philosophy, but to the powerful, enduring human obsession with finding what is lost. The enduring enigma of hidden wealth gives way to a mystery built on power, diplomacy, and a queen whose name echoes through millennia. The Queen of Sheba stands as one of history's most captivating figures, a ruler of immense wealth and wisdom who embarked on a legendary journey to test the famed King Solomon. Ancient texts from the Hebrew Bible, the Quran, and the Kebra Nagast of Ethiopia recount her story, describing a monarch who traveled with a vast caravan of camels laden with gold, precious stones, and spices. She came with hard questions, seeking to understand if Solomon's wisdom was truly a divine gift. Their meeting was a clash of intellects that ended in mutual respect and, according to some traditions, a romantic alliance. But when she returned to her own kingdom, she vanished from the historical record, leaving behind a single, burning question: where was the land of Sheba? For centuries, the location of her opulent realm has been one of the desert's greatest puzzles, with two primary candidates emerging from the sands of time. The first is in modern-day Yemen, home to the ancient Sabaean civilization. Here, in the arid landscape, stand the ruins of the Great Marib Dam, a monumental feat of engineering. This massive structure, built with precise stonework, harnessed seasonal rains for centuries, turning the desert into a fertile plain capable of supporting a large population and generating immense wealth from the trade of frankincense and myrrh. The Sabaeans were a sophisticated people with a written language and the resources to fund a queen's extravagant pilgrimage. The evidence at Marib points to a civilization powerful enough to be the Sheba of legend. Yet 1,000 miles to the southwest, in the highlands of Ethiopia, a competing and equally compelling tradition thrives. Here, the Queen of Sheba, known as Mekhta, is the foundational mother of the nation. The epic Kebra Nagast tells how she returned from Jerusalem carrying Solomon's child, a son named Menelik, who would become the first emperor of a Solomonic dynasty that ruled Ethiopia for nearly 3,000 years. The ancient city of Axum, with its towering, carved obelisks and ruins of palaces, is offered as the capital of her empire. This claim is not taken lightly. It is a cornerstone of Ethiopian identity and royal lineage. So, was Sheba in Arabia or Africa? The archaeological record deepens the mystery rather than solving it. Inscriptions and artifacts confirm that the Sabaean kingdom was real and wealthy, a perfect match for the biblical description. But there is also evidence of a deep cultural and trade connection across the Red Sea, with Sabaean influence clearly present in early Ethiopian architecture and writing. This has led some scholars to a fascinating third theory. Perhaps the Queen of Sheba ruled not a single isolated kingdom, but a vast commercial network that spanned both sides of the water, a mercantile empire connected by trade routes and shared culture. Her power would have derived from controlling the flow of incense, gold, and ideas between Africa and Arabia. The story of her visit to Solomon might then be seen as a record of high-level trade negotiations between two powerful monarchs. The truth of her kingdom may never be pinned to a single spot on a map. Instead, the legend of the Queen of Sheba endures as a testament to a lost world of desert empires whose influence and connections were far greater than we ever knew. Far from the trade routes of Sheba, on the most isolated inhabited island on Earth, a different kind of power was carved from stone. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, is a speck of volcanic rock in the vast Pacific, a place where the horizon is an unbroken circle of ocean. Yet this tiny, remote land is home to one of humanity's most staggering achievements, the Moai. These are not merely heads, as they are often called. They are monumental full-body figures, some standing over 30 feet tall and weighing more than 80 tons, their elongated heads and solemn, heavy-browed faces gazing inland from massive stone platforms called ahu. For centuries, these silent giants have posed a haunting question. How did a Neolithic society with no metal tools and no wheels move these behemoths across miles of rugged terrain, and why did they commit such an immense effort? The answer lies in a profound spiritual belief. The Moai were not idols of gods but representations of deified ancestors. Each statue was commissioned by a clan to honor a specific, powerful forefather. The Rapa Nui people believed that the mana, the spiritual power and vitality of these ancestors, continued to influence the living world. By carving and erecting a moai on the family's ahu, a platform that often also served as a tomb, they believed they were channeling that ancestral mana, ensuring protection, fertility, and prosperity for their tribe. The gaze of the Moai was not toward the sea to welcome visitors, but toward the village to watch over their descendants. The process of their creation was a monumental feat of engineering and faith. The statues were quarried from the volcanic rock of the Rono Raraku crater. Using hand-held stone picks, teams of master carvers would painstakingly shape the Moai directly from the mountainside. Once the statue was freed, except for a keel of rock still attaching it to the bedrock, the real challenge began. How do you move an 80-ton block of stone across the island? The oral traditions of the Rapa Nui people held the answer for generations, a story modern experiments have proven viable. They walked the statues, using a system of ropes and a coordinated rocking motion. teams could make the Moai literally walk upright, swaying from side to side as they were guided along specially prepared roads. This method, while effective, was incredibly dangerous and required the synchronized labor of hundreds of people. It was an act of communal devotion, a physical manifestation of their collective belief. But this very devotion may have sown the seeds of societal collapse. As clans competed to build larger and more impressive Moai to display their status and power, the demand on the island's limited resources became catastrophic. The once lush subtropical forest was systematically cleared to provide rollers, levers, and ropes for transport, and to open land for agriculture to feed the growing population of workers. The deforestation led to severe soil erosion, crippling their ability to grow food. Without large trees, they could no longer build seagoing canoes for deep water fishing, cutting off a vital protein source. The society that had thrived on cooperation and shared purpose fractured under the strain of resource scarcity, descending into clan warfare. The Moai themselves became casualties, toppled from their ahu in a symbolic destruction of a rival clan's ancestral power. The story of Rapa Nui is a powerful, cautionary tale of a brilliant civilization that pushed its environment beyond the breaking point for the sake of spiritual and social ambition. The silent Moai now stand, or lie fallen, as a stark monument to both the height of human achievement and the profound consequences of forgetting our connection to the world that sustains us. The ambition to carve monumental ancestors from stone finds a strange parallel in a desperate act of preservation, one that involved not rock but papyrus. While the Moai were raised to the sky, another profound legacy was being buried deep within the earth to save it from destruction. This is the story of the desert's own great library, a collection of texts so radical they were meant to be erased from history. In 1945, near the Egyptian town of Nag Hammadi, a farmer named Muhammad al-Salman was digging for fertilizer when his hoe struck something hard and hollow. He had unearthed a sealed clay jar, and inside was not gold but a treasure of a different kind, 13 ancient codices or books made of papyrus. These were not ordinary scrolls. They contained over 50 texts, including gospels and spiritual writings that were completely unknown to the modern world. This was the Nag Hammadi Library, and its contents would send shockwaves through our understanding of early Christianity. These were Gnostic texts. The word Gnostic comes from the Greek word for knowledge, gnosis. But this was not about academic learning. It was about a secret, saving knowledge of the divine. The Gnostics were a diverse group of early Christians who believed that the path to salvation was not through faith alone, but through a direct, personal revelation of God, an inner enlightenment that freed the divine spark trapped within the material world. Their writings presented a dramatically different vision of creation and Christ. In texts like the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus is quoted as saying, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you." This is a call to look inward, not outward, to a church hierarchy. Other texts, like the Secret Book of John, describe a complex cosmology where the material world is not created by the one true, supreme God, but by a lesser, flawed deity, a demiurge who is often ignorant or even malevolent. In this view, the physical universe is a prison, and the soul's goal is to escape it through spiritual knowledge. Why were these texts buried in a jar in the desert? The answer is a story of conflict and survival. By the 4th century, as Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire, a process of standardization began. Church authorities defined a canon of accepted texts and worked to root out what they deemed heretical beliefs. The Gnostic writings, with their challenging ideas and emphasis on personal revelation over institutional authority, were a primary target. They were sought out, confiscated, and burned. The monks at a nearby monastery, likely facing such a purge, made a fateful decision. Instead of surrendering their sacred library to the flames, they carefully sealed it in a jar and hid it in the cliffs, hoping to preserve their spiritual heritage for a future generation. For 1600 years, these alternative Christianities lay silent, their voices muffled by the very sands that protected them. Their rediscovery did not simply add a few new pages to history. It forced us to completely reconsider the vibrant, chaotic, and fiercely diverse world of the first Christians. It showed us that the road to the modern church was not a straight, paved highway, but a tangled maze of competing paths, each claiming to hold the truth. The Nag Hammadi Library stands as a powerful testament to the ideas that were almost lost, a secret history of faith preserved by the very desert that so often swallows civilizations whole. The same desert that preserved forbidden gospels also hid an entire city of stone. To reach it, you must first walk through the Sick, a deep, narrow canyon where the cliffs rise hundreds of feet on either side, their swirling bands of rose red and ochre stone blocking out the sun. The path twists and turns for over a mile, a shadowy, natural corridor that builds an almost unbearable sense of anticipation. Then, as you round the final bend, you see it. Through a slender slit in the rock, the treasury, or Al-Khosneh, glows in the filtered light, its ornate, classical facade perfectly carved from the living cliff face. This is Petra, the legendary capital of the Nabatean Arabs, a city that should not exist. In the heart of a barren desert, they built a metropolis not with brick or mortar, but by sculpting it directly from the mountain. The Nabateans were not just brilliant architects, they were masters of one of the desert's most precious commodities, water. Without their hydraulic genius, Petra would have been a ghost town from the start. They transformed their arid environment into a lush, habitable city through an intricate network of dams, cisterns, and channels. They carved channels directly into the walls of the Sick to divert flash floods, a destructive force they tamed into a resource. They constructed massive underground reservoirs to store millions of gallons of rainwater. Every drop was collected, channeled, and conserved through a system of ceramic pipes and sealed tunnels so advanced it would be the envy of many ancient civilizations. This water management was the foundation of their staggering wealth. Petra sat at the crossroads of the ancient world's most lucrative trade routes. Camel caravans laden with frankincense from Arabia, silks from China, and spices from India all converged here. The Nabateans did not just provide a stopping point, they controlled the flow of goods, taxing the merchants and providing security and water in the unfortifying desert. The city grew fabulously rich, and they poured that wealth into their stone city, carving not just tombs like the treasury, but temples, a massive theater that seated thousands, and grand homes, all from the vibrant, multi-hued rock. So why was this magnificent, wealthy, and resilient city eventually abandoned and lost to the Western world for centuries? The answer lies in the very trade that created it. By the 4th century, the Romans had established new sea routes for trade, bypassing the overland caravan roads that were Petra's lifeblood. The city's economic power slowly dwindled. Then, in 363, a massive earthquake struck, crippling the vital water management system that the city depended on. Without the wealth to fund massive repairs and with their trade economy collapsing, the population began a slow but steady exodus. Petra was never violently destroyed, it was simply gradually emptied, its magnificent structures left to the wind and the sand. The desert, which the Nabateans had so brilliantly conquered, slowly began to reclaim its own, burying one of history's greatest engineering marvels under layers of silence and forgetfulness, until a Swiss explorer disguised as a Bedouin reintroduced it to a stunned world. Scattered across the surface of the Great Sand Sea in Libya are fields of a substance that defies simple explanation. This is Libyan desert glass, fragments of natural glass in a captivating yellow-green hue, some as small as pebbles, others weighing as much as 50 pounds. It looks as if a giant shattered a celestial bottle across the dunes, leaving the pieces to bake in the sun for millennia. The sheer volume is staggering, with this glass found across thousands of square miles of empty desert. The central mystery is how it formed. Glass this pure and abundant requires instant, unimaginable heat, far beyond the capability of any ancient human technology. For decades, the leading theory pointed to a massive meteorite impact. The logic was straightforward. A large space rock slams into the desert, generating temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun, melting the silica-rich sand into a searing pool that then cooled into glass. There is just one profound problem. Despite extensive searches, no one has ever found a corresponding crater. The impact site, which should be vast and obvious, is missing. This glaring absence gave rise to a more terrifying and scientifically plausible explanation. What if the glass was forged not by an impact but by an airburst? Imagine a comet or large asteroid not striking the ground but exploding in the atmosphere several miles above the Egyptian-Libyan border. The resulting fireball would have released thousands of times more energy than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, blasting a wave of heat so intense it would have instantly liquefied the desert surface below without ever leaving a crater. The entire event would have lasted only seconds, but its legacy would be frozen in the glass for eternity. This theory transforms the silent, beautiful glass fields from a geological curiosity into the scorched scar of one of the most violent natural events in Earth's recent history. The mystery deepens with a direct connection to one of archaeology's greatest treasures. In the tomb of the Egyptian pharaoh Tutankhamun, a magnificent pectoral necklace was found resting on the mummy's chest. At its center, adorning a scarab beetle, is a piece of beautifully polished yellow-green stone. For years, it was assumed to be a rare gemstone. Scientific analysis, however, revealed the shocking truth. The scarab is carved from a piece of Libyan desert glass. This discovery links the cataclysm to human history in a deeply personal way. It means that the ancient Egyptians, perhaps a generation or two after the event itself, ventured into the deadly Great Sand Sea, found these shining fragments and recognized them as something precious and otherworldly. They saw value in the glass forged by a sky fire, shaping it into a sacred object to protect their king on his journey to the afterlife. So the glass is more than a scientific puzzle, it is a bridge. It connects a violent cosmic event to the artistic and spiritual world of an ancient civilization, leaving us to wonder what stories were told about the day the sky exploded, stories that were eventually lost to the sands, with only a beautiful, enigmatic piece of jewelry left as a clue. The story begins with the rage of a king. According to the Greek historian Herodotus, the Persian emperor Cambyses II, son of Cyrus the Great, dispatched a massive army of 50,000 soldiers from the city of Thebes in 525 before Common Era. Their mission was to march across the desert and destroy the oracle of Ammon at the Siwa oasis. The oracle had dared to deny Cambyses' claim to be a true son of the Egyptian god Ammon, a divine legitimacy he desperately craved to solidify his rule over his newly conquered Egyptian territory. Enraged by this insult, he sent his finest troops on a punitive expedition to wipe the sacred site from the map. The army marched into the vast western desert of Egypt, a realm of shifting dunes and searing heat. They were never seen again. Herodotus reports that as the soldiers were resting at a place called the Oasis of the Blessed, a ferocious sandstorm, a Khamsin, rose from the south with a scorching, fiery wind. The storm was so immense and powerful that it buried the entire army beneath a mountain of sand, swallowing 50,000 men without a trace. For 2,500 years, this tale was considered a dramatic fable, a cautionary story about hubris and the desert's unforgiving power. Yet the sheer scale of the disappearance has tantalized explorers and archaeologists for centuries. How could an entire army, a force larger than the population of many ancient cities, simply vanish? The search for the Lost Legion has become one of archaeology's greatest cold cases. modern expeditions have scoured the proposed routes from Thebes to Siwa using satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar. In 2009, a team led by Italian archaeologists Angelo and Alfredo Castiglione announced a stunning discovery in the remote Sahara. They found what they believed to be the remains of the Persian army, a collection of artifacts scattered near a massive, natural rock shelter that could have served as a campsite. Their findings included hundreds of human bones, bronze weapons, a silver bracelet, an earring consistent with Persian designs of the era, and a dagger that appeared to be from the age of Cambyses. Most compellingly, they found what looked like a mass grave. The theory they proposed is chilling. The army was not necessarily buried in a single, cataclysmic event while on the march. Instead, they may have been caught in a brutal sandstorm while taking refuge at the rock shelter. The storm would have been so dense and relentless that it suffocated the entire force where they rested, with the desert winds then scattering their equipment and burying their bodies over the millennia. Not all scholars are convinced, pointing to a lack of definitive proof linking the artifacts specifically to Cambyses' forces. Yet the discovery proves one thing for certain: a significant military force from the Achaemenid Persian period did meet a catastrophic end in that very desert. Whether it was the 50,000 of legend or a smaller, still substantial contingent, the story of Cambyses' army transforms from pure myth into a historical tragedy. It stands as a stark reminder that in the ancient world, the desert itself was a weapon, a force that could erase the mightiest armies as if they were nothing more than footprints in the sand. The desert does not always keep its silence. In the profound stillness of a sand sea, a strange and haunting music can sometimes emerge. This is the phenomenon of singing sand dunes, a low-frequency hum or a deep, resonant boom that vibrates through the very ground when the sand shifts. From the Sahara to the Gobi and right here in Death Valley, these dunes produce a sound that can be felt as much as heard, a rumble that lasts for several minutes and can carry for miles across the empty landscape. The science behind this desert song is as fascinating as the sound itself. Researchers believe the music is created during a sand avalanche, when the dry, uniform grains of sand slide down the steep slope of a dune. They begin to move in synchronized waves. This collective motion creates a vibration, much like the skin of a massive drum being struck. The sound waves then bounce and amplify between the surface of the dune and the harder layer of sand beneath, generating that sustained, otherworldly hum. The sand itself must be perfectly conditioned, requiring specific grain size, roundness, and a level of humidity that allows for just the right amount of friction. It is a natural instrument of immense scale, playing a single, powerful note. Now consider how an ancient traveler, alone in that vastness, would have experienced this. Without any scientific framework, the sudden, booming voice of the dune would have been a terrifying and sacred event. Was it the angry roar of a desert god warning them away from a sacred place? Or perhaps it was the mournful cry of spirits trapped within the sand, singing of their eternal restlessness. Many cultures that lived near these dunes wove the sounds into their mythologies, interpreting them as divine messages or the manifestations of powerful entities that ruled the shifting sands. These booming dunes remind us that the natural world is full of phenomena that once spoke directly to the human spirit, long before we learned to measure their vibrations. The Song of the Sand is a bridge between our modern understanding of physics and the ancient, instinctual awe of a world alive with unseen voices. A fabled city of white walls and black doors, where treasure sleeps under the shade of palm trees and a sleeping king and queen await their awakening. This was Zazura, the oasis of the little birds, a mirage of paradise that lured generations of men to their doom. Unlike the tangible ruins of Petra or the proven wealth of Sheba, Zazura existed almost entirely in the realm of story, a whispered rumor passed between Bedouin tribes and written in cryptic medieval text. It was described as a whitewashed city, its gates guarded by carved birds, hidden in a remote Saharan wadi, a valley so secluded it was a world unto itself. The legend promised not just gold, but life itself in a land defined by death, an emerald refuge in a sea of sand. This vision of a lost Eden captured the imagination of European explorers in the 1920s and 30s, a period known as the Golden Age of desert exploration. For these men, Zerzura became the ultimate prize, a geographical grail that promised eternal fame to whoever could pierce the veil of the Great Sand Sea. They were not just adventurers, they were members of an informal club called the Zerzura Club, a group that included figures like Ralph Bagnold and Laszlo Almasi, the man who would later be fictionalized as the English patient. Armed with compasses and unreliable maps, they drove their modified Model T Fords into the trackless dunes, chasing shadows. The search for Zerzura was not a single expedition, but a series of obsessive quests that pushed human endurance to its absolute limit. Almasi, in particular, became consumed by the hunt, following ancient rock art and Bedouin tales deep into the Libyan desert. He believed he had found its location in the Gilf Kebir, a massive, plateaued wilderness the size of Switzerland. The expeditions were brutally dangerous. Cars broke down in the blistering heat, water supplies evaporated or were lost. Navigational errors of just a few degrees could mean missing a life, saving well by 100 miles, a death sentence in that landscape. Some explorers did simply vanish, their fate becoming part of the very legend they sought to solve. Their cars were sometimes found years later, half buried by the relentless dunes, silent tombs for men who gambled everything on a story. So, was Zerzura ever real? In a literal sense, no sprawling white city has been found, but the legend likely had a basis in a profound and recurring reality. The Sahara is not a static place. Climate shifts and moving dunes can bury entire oases, only to reveal others centuries later. A particularly fertile wadi, discovered by a lucky traveler, could easily become the source of the myth. When that wadi was later lost, either to a sandstorm or a change in water sources, the story of the lost oasis would be born anew. The treasure of Zerzura, then, was not necessarily gold but water, the most precious commodity in the desert. The true legacy of the Zerzura quest is not a discovered city, but the maps that were drawn in the search for it. The explorers who chased this phantom filled in the last great blank spaces on the world map. They documented unknown mountain ranges, discovered prehistoric cave paintings in the Gilf Kebir, and pioneered the techniques of modern desert travel. In seeking a mirage, they unveiled the true, magnificent, and terrifying face of the Sahara itself. The lost oasis remains a powerful symbol of the human heart's need for a hidden paradise, a reminder that the greatest discoveries are sometimes not the places we find, but the empty spaces we learn to navigate. That same desert which swallowed armies also guards the crypt of its greatest conqueror. The fate of Alexander the Great's tomb is a mystery that has tormented historians and treasure hunters for over 2,000 years. After his sudden death in Babylon in 323 before Common Era, a seemingly simple plan was made to return his body to his ancestral home in Macedonia. But the funeral carriage, a magnificent mobile temple on wheels, was hijacked en route by one of his former generals, Ptolemy. In a brilliant political move, Ptolemy diverted the body to Egypt, understanding that possessing the physical remains of the demigod conqueror would grant him immense power and legitimacy as the new ruler of that ancient land. Alexander was first entombed in the city he had founded, Memphis, before being moved to his final, legendary resting place in the city that bore his name, Alexandria. For centuries, his mausoleum, known as the Soma, meaning body, was one of the most famous sites in the ancient world. It became a place of pilgrimage for Roman emperors and dignitaries who would come to pay their respects, some even reportedly borrowing his armor for good luck in battle. Julius Caesar was said to have visited, and the Emperor Augustus, upon viewing the body, accidentally broke off a piece of the nose. Then, around the 4th century Common Era, the historical record falls silent. The tomb and the conqueror within vanished completely. Where did it go? The theories are as numerous as the failed expeditions. Some believe it was destroyed by a tsunami or a series of earthquakes that reshaped the Alexandrian coastline. Others point to religious conflict, suggesting early Christians or later Muslim rulers dismantled the pagan shrine. The most tantalizing possibility is that it still lies hidden somewhere beneath the modern, bustling metropolis, buried under centuries of silt and urban development. The search has been relentless. Over 140 official attempts have been launched to find the tomb, each layering new speculation onto the old. One theory places it deep beneath the city's ancient Islamic cemetery. Another suggests it lies submerged in the murky waters of the city's eastern harbor. Each new clue, from a mysterious black sarcophagus unearthed during construction to a fragment of an ancient wall, sparks a fresh wave of excitement, but so far, every lead has dissolved into disappointment. The tomb of Alexander represents the ultimate prize, not just for the incalculable treasures it might hold, but for the chance to stand in the presence of the man who single-handedly reshaped the ancient world. To find it would be to touch the very fabric of history, to solve a puzzle that has endured for millennia. Yet it remains a ghost, a presence felt but never seen, a testament to the desert's enduring power to keep its most legendary secrets hidden in plain sight. While the search for Alexander's tomb captivates the modern world, a far older and more profound astronomical mystery lies deep in the Egyptian Sahara. Long before the pharaohs built their pyramids, a community of cattle herders gathered massive stones and arranged them with a purpose that would not be understood for thousands of years. This is Nabta Playa, a ceremonial site that is older than Stonehenge by over 1,000 years. What appears at first glance to be a random scattering of rocks is actually one of the world's earliest and most sophisticated astronomical observatories. These people were not the simple nomads we might imagine. They were pioneers who tracked the heavens with stunning precision. The centerpiece of the site is a stone circle, often called the Saharan Stonehenge. Its slabs are not arranged randomly. Key stones align with the rising points of the sun during the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. Other stones point toward specific stars, like those in the belt of the constellation Orion, which held great significance for many ancient cultures. This was not just a calendar, it was a cosmic clock etched into the desert floor. The very existence of Nabta Playa shatters our assumptions about prehistoric desert life. This was a society complex enough to support astronomer priests, individuals who could dedicate their lives to observing the sky and interpreting its patterns. Their work was vital for survival. The summer solstice marked the beginning of the annual monsoon rains. By accurately predicting this celestial event, these ancient people knew when to drive their herds back to the playa, a seasonal lake bed that would soon fill with water and sprout with fresh grass. Their astronomy was directly tied to their economy and their religion, a way of ensuring the continuation of life itself. The most haunting evidence of their beliefs lies just beneath the surface. Archaeologists have uncovered burials of long-horned cattle carefully placed in clay-lined chambers. These were not food offerings but ritual interments, suggesting these animals were seen as sacred, perhaps even as avatars of gods or ancestors. This reverence for cattle, combined with their celestial knowledge, paints a picture of a deeply spiritual and organized society that flourished in what is now one of the most arid places on Earth. So why was this advanced site eventually abandoned? The answer, once again, is written in the climate. As the desert grew drier and the rains became less reliable, the lifeline that sustained Nabta Playa was severed. The people were forced to migrate, likely toward the Nile Valley. They did not disappear, they carried their knowledge with them. The sophisticated understanding of astronomy, the ritual practices, and the social organization developed at Nabta Playa may have been the very seeds that later blossomed into the civilization of the pharaohs. The stones of Nabta Playa stand as a silent testament to a forgotten Genesis, proving that the roots of civilization are far older and more deeply planted in the desert sands than we ever knew. The silent stones of Nabta Playa tell a story of a green Sahara, but another monument, far more famous, might hold an even older secret written not in its alignment, but in its weathered skin. Towering over the Giza Plateau, the Great Sphinx presents a riddle that goes far beyond its missing nose. Conventional Egyptology attributes its creation to the pharaoh Khafre around 2,500 years before Common Era, making it roughly 4,500 years old. Yet, a compelling geological theory challenges this timeline, suggesting the Sphinx is not just ancient but prehistoric. This is the water erosion hypothesis, first proposed by scholar John Anthony West and later championed by geologist Robert Schoch. Their argument hinges on the pattern of erosion visible on the Sphinx's body and the walls of the enclosure it sits within. The weathering is deep, with vertical, undulating channels and scalloped hollows. This type of erosion, Schoch argues, is not the result of wind and sand, which scours and polishes horizontal surfaces. It is the unmistakable signature of heavy, prolonged rainfall, water running in sheets over the limestone for centuries. This presents a monumental problem. The climate of Egypt has been hyper-arid for the last 5,000 years, a vast desert receiving minimal rain. For the Sphinx to exhibit such deep water weathering, it must have been carved during a period when the region experienced a much wetter climate. This pushes its origin back to a time before the Sahara Desert even existed, to what is known as the African Humid Period, which ended around 5,000 years ago. To accept this is to rewrite history, suggesting a sophisticated civilization capable of monumental sculpture existed in the Nile Valley long before the first pharaohs. The debate this theory sparked was, and remains, ferocious. Mainstream Egyptologists counter that the erosion could be explained by other factors, like the effects of morning dew, capillary action drawing salt to the surface, or even the Nile's occasional flooding. They point to a lack of any archaeological evidence, such as tools or settlements, that would support the existence of such an advanced pre-pharaonic society. The controversy forces us to ask a profound question. Are we looking at the Sphinx through the lens of what we know, or are we ignoring what the stone itself is trying to tell us? If the geological evidence is correct, then the Sphinx is not merely a portrait of a fourth dynasty king, but a relic from a lost age, a silent guardian from a green world that vanished beneath the sands, its true builders and purpose forgotten to time. The legend of King Solomon's mines has echoed for centuries, a tale of unimaginable wealth drawn from the earth. For generations, explorers sought this source of the king's gold, but the true location may have been hidden in plain sight, not for a precious metal, but for a far more utilitarian one. In the stark, beautiful Timna Valley of southern Israel, the desert floor is scarred with the remnants of an immense industrial enterprise. This was not a mine for gold, but for copper, the backbone of the ancient world. Here, archaeologists have uncovered the true scale of a metalworking operation that fueled empires. The valley is a sprawling network of deep shafts and tunnels, some plunging over 100 feet into the ground. The air in these ancient foundries must have been thick with smoke and the smell of burning charcoal, as workers labored day and night to extract the precious green ore and smelt it into ingots of pure, usable copper. For a long time, the biblical connection seemed clear. The mines were dated to the 10th century before Common Era, the very time when Solomon was said to have ruled. It was easy to picture his overseers managing this vast enterprise, the prophets flowing to Jerusalem to build the famed temple. But as the tools of archaeology improved, a more complex story emerged from the slag heaps. Excavations revealed Egyptian artifacts, including a temple dedicated to the goddess Hathor, right at the heart of the mining district. Inscriptions and artifacts firmly placed the Egyptians here during the late Bronze Age, centuries before Solomon. So, who was really in charge? The evidence now suggests a fascinating sequence of control. The Egyptians were the first to industrialize the valley, establishing large-scale production to feed their own empire's insatiable demand for bronze tools and weapons. When their power waned, local tribes, likely the Edomites, took over the operations. They continued the work, refining the techniques. This is where the biblical king enters the picture. Rather than building the mines himself, Solomon's legendary wisdom may have been expressed through economics and diplomacy. His kingdom, centered in Jerusalem, could have controlled the trade routes that transported the finished copper ingots to distant markets. He would have taxed the goods, provided security, and grown wealthy from the commerce, not necessarily the direct mining. The real marvel is the operation itself. This was not a small-scale, seasonal effort. It was a full-blown industrial complex running for centuries. It required a sophisticated understanding of geology, chemistry, and logistics. Miners used stone hammers and fire setting, heating the rock with fire, and then dousing it with water to make it crack. Smelters built complex furnaces capable of reaching temperatures over 1,000 degrees Celsius, separating the pure copper from the rocky ore. The organization needed to feed, house, and manage thousands of workers in this harsh environment was a monumental achievement. So were these the mines of King Solomon. In a way, yes, they were the economic engine that could have powered his wealthy kingdom, even if he did not personally swing a mining hammer. The Timna Valley reveals a truth more interesting than legend, a story of shifting power, ancient globalization, and the humble, essential metal that built the world long before gold ever could. While the Nazca lines of Peru capture the imagination with their intricate animal forms, a far larger human figure stands vigil in the world's driest desert. The Atacama Giant of Chile is a colossal geoglyph stretching over 390 feet down the slope of a solitary hill, a being so immense it can only be comprehended from the air. This stylized human form, with its square head and long, straight legs, is the largest prehistoric anthropomorphic figure on the planet. Unlike the mysterious purpose of the Nazca lines, the giant's function may be rooted in the practical and celestial needs of the people who carved it. One compelling theory suggests it was a sophisticated lunar calendar. The figure's head is adorned with distinctive projections that correspond precisely to the points on the horizon where the moon rises and sets during its major lunar standstill, a complex 18.6-year cycle. For a desert culture, tracking the moon was not an abstract exercise. It was essential for marking time, predicting tides, and organizing rituals. The giant served as a massive, permanent observatory, its form literally mapping the rhythm of the heavens onto the earth. Yet its gaze also seems fixed on the terrestrial world. The giant is positioned directly along ancient llama caravan routes that crisscrossed the Atacama. Its immense size and prominent location would have been an unmissable guidepost for traders navigating the featureless expanse, a silent, reassuring sentinel pointing the way to water and safe passage. In this sense, the figure was both a map and a milestone, a celestial clock and a terrestrial road sign fused into one. But could it have been more? Many researchers believe the giant also represented a powerful deity, perhaps a god of the highlands who watched over both the travelers and the skies. The local tribes may have seen the figure not as a mere drawing, but as a manifestation of a divine protector, a being whose presence was woven into the very fabric of their landscape and cosmology. The Atacama Giant does not ask us to choose a single meaning. Instead, it stands as a monumental testament to a world view where the practical and the spiritual were inseparable, where the path of the moon and the path of the trader were guided by the same giant hand. Beneath the sun-scorched surface of the desert lies its most precious secret, a hidden ocean of fresh water. Ancient engineers did not fight the arid environment. They learned to listen to it, developing technologies that pulled life from rock and air itself. One of the most brilliant of these systems is the Qanat, a masterpiece of Persian hydrology that transformed barren lands into blooming gardens. The process began high in the mountains where snowmelt and rainwater would seep into the ground. Instead of trying to dam violent surface rivers that would evaporate under the desert sun, Persian engineers devised a way to tap into the water table gently and sustainably. They would dig a vertical shaft down to the water-bearing layer. Then, with astonishing precision, they would begin tunneling a gently sloping underground channel from the foothills all the way to the valley floor where their settlement lay. A series of these vertical shafts, spaced every 100 feet or so, were dug along the tunnel's path, serving both as ventilation and as access points for the teams of workers who spent generations removing the debris. The genius of the Qanat is its gravity-fed design. The water, once intercepted deep underground, would flow silently and coolly through the dark tunnel, completely protected from the evaporating heat above. It would emerge miles away, a steady, reliable stream in the heart of a village or a field, day and night, year after year, century after century. This was not a mere well, it was a man-made spring, a subterranean river that could sustain an entire city. But what about deserts that had no mountains, no hidden aquifers to tap? In places like the Atacama of Chile, one of the driest places on Earth, people turned to the sky for a different kind of harvest. Here, a cold ocean current creates a dense, persistent fog that rolls in from the Pacific, known locally as the Camanchaca. The people learned to weave giant, vertical nets from plastic or nylon mesh, erecting them on hillsides facing the sea. As the fog blows through these nets, countless tiny water droplets cling to the fibers, coalesce, and then drip down into collection gutters and pipes. A single panel can harvest dozens of gallons of pure, fresh water in a single day, water that is then channeled to reservoirs to nourish small communities and reforest the barren land. This modern technique echoes ancient practices where piles of stones were used to condense atmospheric moisture. Both the Qanat and the fog net represent a profound understanding of the local environment. They are not technologies of domination but of harmony. They work with the desert's own rhythms, capturing water where it naturally travels, whether through the earth or the air. Without these hidden water sources, the great caravanserais of the Silk Road would have withered, the gardens of Persia would have remained dust, and life in the coastal deserts would have been impossible. They remind us that survival in the harshest climates has always depended on one thing: the wisdom to find water where none seems to exist. The silent testimony of the mummies holds a chemical secret that should not exist. In the 1990s, a German toxicologist named Svetlana Balabanova was conducting routine hair and tissue tests on Egyptian mummies when she stumbled upon a result so bizarre she thought her equipment had malfunctioned. She found traces of two powerful substances, cocaine and nicotine. The discovery was scientifically sound, yet historically impossible. Cocaine is derived from the coca plant, which grew exclusively in South America. Nicotine, while present in some Old World plants, was predominantly associated with tobacco, a crop native to the Americas. These mummies were centuries, even millennia, old, predating Christopher Columbus by 1,000 years or more. How could they have access to products from a continent that, according to all established history, was completely unknown to the ancient world? The scientific community was thrown into an uproar. The immediate and most conservative theory was contamination. Perhaps the mummies had been handled by modern archaeologists who smoked or used coca products, transferring the chemicals onto the ancient remains. Yet Balabanova's methods were meticulous, and she tested samples from deep within the tissue and bone, areas nearly impossible to contaminate after death. Other researchers replicated her findings on mummies from other collections, strengthening the case that the results were real. This left only one other startling possibility: that ancient Egyptians had contact with the Americas long before the Vikings or Columbus. Could Phoenician or Egyptian ships have crossed the Atlantic, or perhaps circumnavigated Africa and crossed the Indian and Pacific Oceans, establishing a trade route for these exotic goods? We know the ancient Egyptians were skilled sailors who traded for incense and exotic woods from the land of Punt, a place we still cannot definitively locate. Is it so difficult to believe their trading networks extended even further? A more nuanced theory suggests the substances were not tobacco and coca as we know them, but related Old World plants that have since gone extinct. Perhaps a nicotine-rich plant once grew in Africa or Asia, only to die out, its existence erased from the botanical record. The same could be true for a cocaine-like substance. Yet no evidence of such plants has ever been found in Old World archaeology or texts. The mystery of the cocaine mummies remains a profound anomaly. It is a puzzle that does not fit neatly into our timeline of history, forcing us to question the completeness of our knowledge. Were the ancient worlds far more interconnected than we ever dared to believe, or does the answer lie in a lost chapter of botany we have yet to rediscover? The scent of frankincense was worth more than gold. This aromatic resin, harvested from the scraggly trees of southern Arabia, was the lifeblood of the ancient world, and Ubar was its beating heart. The city did not simply sit on a trade route, it commanded it. Every caravan of camels laden with the precious tears of sap had to pass through its gates, making Ubar the central exchange where desert tribes and sea merchants met. The wealth this generated was staggering, financing the construction of those towering pillars and deep, fortified walls. Frankincense was not a luxury, it was a necessity, burned in vast quantities in the temples of Egypt, Rome, and Persia, used in medicines and essential for royal and religious ceremonies. The city grew fat on this endless stream of commerce, its power built on the fragrant smoke that rose to the heavens, but this very prosperity contained the seeds of its own destruction. To fuel the caravans, vast amounts of firewood were needed for cooking and for the smiths who shod thousands of camels. The local acacia forests, once dense, were systematically stripped. The very camels that were the source of Ubar's wealth also contributed to the ecological crisis, overgrazing the fragile desert shrubs that held the topsoil in place. With the protective vegetation gone, the desert began to advance. The land around Ubar, once capable of supporting a large population, slowly turned to dust, unable to sustain the very system that had made it rich. The city's colossal success at managing trade may have blinded its rulers to the slow, creeping emergency unfolding at their doorstep. They were masters of commerce, but perhaps they failed to see that they were destroying the ecological foundation that made that commerce possible. The final collapse, when the limestone cavern gave way, was a single, catastrophic event. But the path to that moment was paved by the relentless demand for a single, sacred commodity, a demand that ultimately consumed the city it had built. The Norse longships are icons of icy fjords and northern seas, yet their dragon prows may have once cast shadows on the desert sands of North America. While we accept that Vikings like Leif Erikson reached the coastline of Canada around the year 1000, a controversial stone found deep in the American Midwest suggests their travels did not end at the shore. In 1898, a Swedish immigrant farmer named Olof Oman was clearing trees on his land near Kensington, Minnesota, when he unearthed a flat, 200-pound slab of grey-wacky stone tangled in the roots of a poplar tree. Carved into its face were strange, angular characters. This was the Kensington runestone, and its inscription told a harrowing tale. It spoke of 8 Goths and 22 Norwegians on an exploration journey from Vinland far to the west. The message was a desperate one, dated to the year 1362. It described a group of men waiting by a lake with their ships, only to return and find 10 of their companions red with blood and dead. The stone ends with a plea, Ave Virgo Maria, save us from evil. If genuine, this single artifact would shatter our understanding of pre-Columbian exploration, placing Norse adventurers deep in the heart of the continent a full 130 years before Columbus, and at a time when the medieval world was reeling from the Black Death. The immediate reaction from scholars was swift and dismissive. They declared it an obvious hoax, the work of a prankster or the farmer himself. The runes used were a mix of styles, some of which experts claimed were not in use during the 14th century. The language seemed oddly modern, and the very idea of Vikings in Minnesota seemed too fantastical to be true. For decades, the stone was relegated to the status of a curious forgery. Yet the story refused to die. Later linguistic analysis revealed that the runic alphabet used on the stone was in fact a perfect match for a dialect used in remote parts of Sweden in the 1300s. The grammar, once criticized, was found to be consistent with medieval Scandinavian languages. Even the physical evidence held up. Geologists confirmed that the weathering on the inscription was ancient, and the tree that had grown over it was estimated to be at least 40 years old when it was cut down, meaning the stone had to have been placed there long before Olaf Oman owned the land. If the Vikings did make it this far inland, how did they get there? The most plausible route is a staggering journey up the St. Lawrence River, through the Great Lakes, and then overland via river systems into what is now Minnesota. This was not a casual voyage, it was an epic expedition of immense ambition. They would have been searching for something, perhaps the source of the furs and exotic goods that native tribes spoke of, or maybe a legendary water route to the Pacific. They would have encountered a landscape utterly alien to them, trading the deep, cold salt of the Atlantic for the vast, freshwater expanse of the Great Lakes, and finally the strange, arid plains of the Midwest. The Kensington runestone is not alone. Other enigmatic finds dot the region, from a supposed Norse battle axe found in Minnesota to the mooring stone of Runestone Hill, a large rock with a hole that perfectly fits the prow of a Viking ship, suggesting it was used as an ancient docking point. The academic world remains deeply divided, with most historians citing a profound lack of supporting archaeological evidence, such as settlements or graves. Yet the stone persists, a silent, stubborn sentinel in the desert of history. It challenges us to ask if we have underestimated the courage and reach of the Viking explorers, and if the deserts of America once echoed with the footsteps of Norsemen who dared to travel where no European would again for centuries. Deep beneath the fairy chimneys and carved rock spires of Cappadocia, an entire world lies in reverse. This is not a city that reaches for the sky, but one that plunges into the earth, a labyrinth of staggering complexity carved from soft volcanic tuff. The Derinkuyu underground city descends 18 levels into the darkness, a self-sufficient fortress capable of sheltering up to 20,000 people along with their livestock and supplies. The scale is almost incomprehensible. Imagine a honeycomb of living quarters, stables, wine presses, and churches, all connected by miles of tunnels so narrow that a single person could defend them against an army. Massive circular stone doors weighing half a ton each could be rolled shut to seal off entire sections, each a perfect, impregnable barrier. Ventilation shafts, some over 100 feet deep, provided fresh air to the deepest chambers, while intricate water wells tapped into underground aquifers, ensuring a constant supply even during the longest sieges. Who built this subterranean marvel, and what were they hiding from? The origins are shrouded in layers of time, likely beginning with the Hittites over 3,000 years ago, who carved out the first simple chambers. But the complex we see today was expanded and perfected by early Christians, fleeing relentless persecution from the Roman Empire and later from Arab raids. For these communities, the underground cities were not just a refuge, they were a secret world where their faith could survive and even flourish, hidden in plain sight. The walls of some chambers are still adorned with simple crosses, a silent testament to the prayers that echoed in the dark. Yet, the sheer sophistication of the engineering raises haunting questions. How did they coordinate the excavation of such a vast space without modern tools? And how did they manage waste, airflow, and social order for thousands of people living in confined darkness for months at a time? The cities were equipped with everything needed for long-term survival, from communal kitchens with cleverly designed chimneys that dispersed smoke to avoid detection, to grave sites carved into the rock, preparing for every eventuality of a life under siege. The true mystery is not just how they built it, but the profound sense of urgency that drove them to create such an extensive sanctuary, a monument not to conquest but to the desperate, enduring human will to simply endure. This same human drive to build towards the heavens finds its ultimate expression in a shape that transcends continents and cultures. From the banks of the Nile to the jungles of Mesoamerica, the pyramid stands as one of humanity's most enduring and mysterious architectural forms. While the Great Pyramid of Giza is the most famous, it is far from alone. Consider the Great Ziggurat of Ur in Mesopotamia, a massive stepped pyramid of baked bricks that served as a temple to the moon god Nana. Or the Nubian pyramids of Mara in Sudan, hundreds of steep-sided structures built from reddish mud brick that mark the tombs of Kushite kings and queens. These are not random, independent inventions. They are part of a global phenomenon, a shared architectural idea that emerged in desert and desert-adjacent cultures separated by vast oceans. The question is, why? Why did so many civilizations with no possible contact all choose this same, specific, and incredibly difficult shape to build? The answer may lie not in shared blueprints, but in a shared human instinct for what the pyramid represents. One of the most powerful and recurring symbols is the primordial mound. In Egyptian mythology, the world began with a single mound of earth rising from the endless waters of chaos. The pyramid, with its square base and 4 triangular sides rising to a point, is a perfect stone recreation of this first act of creation. It is a symbol of stability and order imposed upon chaos, a sacred center for the world. By building it, a pharaoh was not just constructing a tomb, he was reenacting the very birth of the cosmos and ensuring its continued existence. The pyramid is also a stairway to the heavens. The step design of the Mesopotamian ziggurats made this purpose explicit. Priests would climb the towering stages, each level representing a different celestial sphere, moving closer to the gods with every step. The smooth-sided Egyptian pyramid, while less literal, served a similar function. Its capstone, often covered in electrum to catch the first and last light of the sun, was seen as a point of direct connection between the earthly and divine realms. The king's soul would climb this radiant ramp to join the eternal circuit of the stars. Finally, the pyramid is an undeniable symbol of power, a statement carved in stone that echoes across the desert. In every culture that built them, the pyramid was a project that consumed the entire kingdom's resources for generations. To marshal the labor, feed the workers, and direct the engineering required a society of immense organization and a ruler of absolute authority. A pyramid did not just house a king's body, it demonstrated his God-given right to command the very landscape and the people upon it. It was a permanent, indestructible advertisement of his dynasty's might. So when we look at the pyramids of Giza or the silent Nubian pyramids of Sudan, we are seeing more than just tombs or temples. We are looking at a fundamental human idea given physical form, a collective dream of creation, ascent, and power that was so compelling it arose again and again across the ancient world, a silent testament to the unity of the human spirit beneath our diverse histories. From the legendary city of Ubar to the silent, cosmic stones of Nabta, we have walked with pharaohs and hunters, traced the paths of forgotten caravans, and stood in the shadow of giants carved from desert rock. These 25 secrets are more than just puzzles from the past. They are a profound testament to the unyielding human spirit. In the face of the world's harshest environments, our ancestors demonstrated breathtaking ingenuity, building water systems from mountain air and observatories from stone. They showed immense resilience, adapting to catastrophic climate shifts and preserving their most sacred beliefs against the threat of oblivion. And they reached for the heavens with a spiritual depth that still resonates today, carving their prayers into the very skin of the earth. Each mystery reminds us that history is not a simple timeline, but a deep, echoing well of stories waiting to be heard. So we turn this final question over to you. Which of these desert secrets captured your imagination most completely? Was it the phantom army of Cambyses swallowed by a sandstorm, or the forbidden gospels of Nag Hammadi saved from the flames? Do you dream of finding Alexander's lost tomb, or does the song of the booming dunes call to you? Tell us which mystery you find most compelling and share your own hope for the next great discovery. What lost secret do you believe is still waiting beneath the sands, ready to rewrite our understanding of the ancient world? Let us know your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to join us on our next journey into the forgotten corners of history.